Hey, welcome back to another episode of Hot Hardware's 2.5 Geeks. It's been a while. We're back. I brought my pencil. Didn't David Lee Roth say that? I forget. Anyways, it's been a long time, and we've moved to a new format, which is a good thing. They're going to keep us organized. They're going to keep us stylized, hopefully, at least a little bit more than we are. And that's the guys from Queens Network. We are live streaming via guys from Queens. Great people over there. Make sure you check them out. GFQ. What's John? What's the URL for those guys on GFQ?
GFQnetwork.com.
GFQnetwork.com. Thank you, John. John is our handy production man. And with me, as always, in this 2.5 Geeks episode, one of us is the half geeks. You'll have to guess which one is. With me is Marco Chiappetta, the illustrious Marco Chiappetta, managing editor for HotHardware.com, and Paul Lilly, editor at Extra Large and in charge.
Thanks. Hello.
I didn't mean like size-wise. I meant like, worldwide, maybe.
Yeah.
Although that fedora, that fedora might be extra large, that's for sure, and stylish.
It might be. I tried not wearing it once, and then someone called me out on it. So now I feel like I have to wear it for all the episodes.
Yeah, no, that's you, man. That's your swag, your swagger. Well, anyways,
it'd be like seeing you with hair; it just wouldn't fit.
Oh, no. That's so cruel. That's so cruel. Now I'm going back to that extra large joke again. No. Hey, this is my solar sex panel, all right? So, like the song, right? Yeah, right.
Yeah. It's winter right now, so not much sunshine, I hear.
Right. Whatever works for you. All right. Well, gentlemen, it has been a long time. We've got a lot to cover. We could cover many things, but we're going to boil it down to some of the most current happenings and big announcements lately. It seems like in all areas of computing, whether you talk mobile, whether you talk handsets, whether you talk notebooks, whether you talk desktop PC enthusiast and gaming, we have got a lot to chew on as we roll up to the CES timeframe coming in January 2018. So yeah, let's dig right in. Marco right now is giddier than a geek on Christmas Eve, waiting for geek toys. He is playing with none other than an NVIDIA Titan V, and would like to show it to you and tell you all about this beast.
Yeah, so it's kind of crazy. Since we last shot a podcast, NVIDIA launched 2 Titans. So let me first show this one because this one's really cool too. They launched the Star Wars edition Titan XPs. This is the Galactic Empire version. Can you guys see that? Am I holding it in a good spot? There's that beauty.
Yeah, it looks good.
Since then, this is just nuts. Here is the brand new, just announced, just released this week Titan V. This card is nuts. I just got it today. I am benchmarking it right now. I pulled it out of the test system so that we could shoot. Now, the GPU at the heart of this card is basically the same one used on the Tesla, the Tesla based on the Volta architecture, the GV100 GPU with 5,120 CUDA cores, but also 630 specialized tensor cores. There is also, on this card, there's 12 gigs of HBM2 memory attached. On the Tesla card, there's 16 gigs, but 12 gigs of HBM2 attached to this guy. And in terms of the form factor, it is basically identical to the original Titan XP. You have the same image outputs, the single HDMI, the triple display ports. You have only 2 power connectors, one 8-pin, one 6-pin. You have this nice smooth back plate. There isn't a removable slot to do SLI because you'll notice there's no SLI connectors. I'm not clear if NVIDIA is going to support multi-GPU over PCI Express, but no SLI connectors on this guy. And the shroud looks just like the original Titan XP as well, except for the gold color on here. It's got a vapor chamber cooler under there, but instead of the silver, the black with silver accents, it's got this nice gold. Card is a beast. It's a monster. Now, I should qualify, this is not the consumer-focused gaming card. This card is targeted at professionals doing AI, deep learning, that kind of analysis that you need, a really wide architecture like a GPU to process all of that data. but it is still a monster in games. I will hopefully have the review up tomorrow, if not Thursday. But just it's nuts. $3,000 card. So in terms of value for gamers, it's not going to be there. Again, this is not the gamer's card. I need to reiterate, not the gamer's graphics card, but still super exciting, and it has me really excited to see the consumer-focused Volta-based cards.
Yeah, I think that's what's important to note to folks is that although it's not the consumer based card, it's certainly at $3,000, and it's got a lot more going on under the hood than the consumer version of Volta when it arrives from NVIDIA. It is still Volta architecture, so it gives us an early view, perhaps, of what to expect at the high end. Maybe what to expect and then some, because it is such a high end, expensive card. But you're getting an early view of what Volta is capable of. Now there's also tensor cores on board that GPU too, right? For machine learning. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. There's 630 tensor cores, and those. So when you see, if you look at our article from the announcement, you'll see the crazy high 110 teraflops of deep learning compute performance. So if you're using the regular CUDA cores, it is still a major step up over Titan XP. It's somewhere around 14 teraflops. But if you are leveraging those tensor cores, which can basically do tons of math in parallel, they have, it's a specialized design. Let me just double check. I think it was 5 by 5, a 5 by 5 array, and it can basically do math across everything at once. That's when you can hit this theoretical peak of around 110 teraflops, which is going to be huge, for deep learning inference and for, people working in that field. If you need, if you don't want to have a crazy, hundreds of thousands of dollars server with Teslas in it, and you have a powerful workstation and you're, working on deep learning and you want something powerful in your workstation, Titan V is it. So.
Yeah. Nice. Cool. So what are you seeing? Can you give us an early taste maybe of what sort of performance we're talking about with this thing?
Sure. Do you want to talk gaming or compute? My Excel
maybe one little gem from each if you have it at the handy. And I noticed for supplemental power, did you talk about that? PCI Express 6-pin and 8-pin, or 2 8-pins?
1 6-pin, 1 8-pin. 1 6-pin, 1 8-pin. I have power numbers while gaming. Idle is a little higher than Pascal. The card idled in my test rig at 81 watts. Under full load, it was the highest power of the test group. The system, this is not just the card, the system sucked 387 watts from the wall. To give you an idea, the Titan XP did 364 watts. So slightly higher power, but way higher performance. Just to give you a taste, let me grab a game here. Let's see. So Middle Earth at 4K, completely maxed out in quality. A Titan XP does 59 frames per second. This does 69 frames per second. Something like Hitman. Do I have Hitman? Yeah. Titan XP did 73 frames per second. This does 91 frames per second. So I have a lot more numbers. It's basically across the board, so 3D Mark Time Spy. A Titan XP 9771. This just shy of 12,000. It's just. Now, again, and this is not the gaming card, but it's still, without being tuned for games, it still smokes the fastest Pascal card that's out there. Now, in compute, it's freaking nuts. For mining with no tweaking whatsoever, literally just plugged it in and ran Claymore's miner. Titan XP is around 37.5 mega hashes a second. This thing is just shy of 70 mega hashes a second. And in LuxMark, so OpenCL Lux Render, Titan XP in let's just use the LuxBall HDR render, about 24,000. This is 52,000. So like double the performance, more than double the performance. It's just a compute beast. And then I have some scientific analysis tests where the double precision units get used on Titan V where they don't get used on Titan XP, and we're talking many times the performance of Titan XP.
Wow.
It can't even be compared. It's off the charts faster.
Wow, good stuff. I mean, and you're talking about HBM2 memory on board, right? So this is the full, although it resides in a PCI Express card that looks a lot like a consumer graphics card. This is the full Volta implementation, or at least as much as we know of it, with HBM2 rather than, you know, Titan XP, of course, which uses GDDR5X. So,
well, one fewer memory stack than the Tesla. The Tesla is a 16 gig HBM2 implementation, so basically one stack.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
It's linked to the GPU over a 3072-bit interface. Just a beast of a card.
Paul, you want one?
Oh, I think anyone who plays games or needs that kind of horsepower would want one. But like I said, at $300, it's not really a gaming card. It's a specific audience they're targeting. I think what's interesting is that they released it as a Titan V instead of, like, say, a professional setting like a Quadro card or something like that.
I'm sure.
Yeah, but I mean, just as far as the Titan V is generally not like a deep learning GPU, where this one is for that kind of workload.
Right.
So
you would have
that to me was interesting.
They would have called it like Volta V whatever, instead of
Titan X. Titan XP is Pascal. Maybe there'll be a Titan XV. Who knows?
Yeah. Interesting stuff. And Marco is going to continue to beat the doors and kick the tires in that sucker over the next day or so, and we will have a full review, performance review in the days ahead. Not that, again, if you're just a gamer, that this is going to be a practical thing for you to consider, but it certainly is interesting in terms of next generation GPU performance for NVIDIA. I don't know. What about the mining? And then we'll move on. But question about the mining. I mean, if you're talking about nearly double, now I'm doing the math here, nearly double the throughput hash rate of a Titan XP at only a fraction more power, not much more power, it's probably a pretty efficient mining card, relatively speaking, even though it eats power, right?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. Relatively speaking, in terms of strictly efficiency for mining, it's way more efficient than anything else out there at that kind of speed.
So how much more power did it consume while mining than XP?
I don't have mining power numbers. I had gaming. Okay. So under full load gaming, it was only 20 more watts.
Okay. Yeah. Have to be interesting to see what it looks like mining, because there might be some folks that are thinking, I wonder, at 70, mega hashes a second, how long it'll take me to pay that sucker off, in Ether.
Yeah, you can probably pay it off in a few months.
I mean, that's a lot of throughput. So good stuff. And the Star Wars Collector Edition is always a cool card to see as well. So thanks for that, Marco.
That full review is live if you want to see that review. If you're watching this and you want to see what the Titan XP Star Wars Edition does, that full review has been live for a couple of weeks now, so you can come by and check that out.
Cool. Yeah, that's some badass design work by the folks from NVIDIA. Same relative GPU performance, right? Or maybe a little bit goosed up performance-wise.
It's the same Titan XP, just stylized with the Star Wars collector stuff.
Gotcha. Cool. All right. Well, let's move on to the land of mobile and look at something in the notebook space, laptops. Intel came out with their 8th generation Kaby Lake R series quad-core chips for laptops, and we have been getting in various models from them, from various OEMs over the past few months. And so whether it be Dell or HP, lots of stuff coming in, Lenovo, all cranked up with quad cores now in these ultralights that were otherwise, formerly dual cores. So interesting stuff. Paul took a look at the HP Spectre x360, HP Spectre. I'm going to say it right. Enunciate that, because I've been called out on it before. I guess it's my Bostonian in me, Paul. But what do you think about this machine, and how'd you like it?
Well, yeah, so we're starting to see an influx of refreshed laptops and 2-in-1s with the Kaby Lake refresh, which is a little confusing naming scheme, but we'll get into that a little bit later. This one, let me hold it up for you guys, see if you can see that. Ooh,
shiny.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Thin and light. So when there's a new processor release, I mean, it's pretty typical that the OEMs, they refresh their laptops. It's almost like cars, where every new model year you have a new model. So this would be the late 2017 for the Spectre x360. But they didn't just slap an 8th gen core processor in there. They made it a little bit thinner and lighter. And one of the biggest feedback they got from consumers was that the previous generation was a little bit loud when the fan would kick up full blast. And, you know, for a thin and light, that's going to happen pretty quick when you put it under load. So they made a concerted effort to make this one considerably quieter. And that, to me, is probably the biggest selling point of this, aside from, you know, the processor upgrade, because you're getting a bump to a quad-core chip, is that it does run incredibly quiet, even under load. It doesn't make a lot of noise like you see some thin and lights do. The downside to that is that it throttles a little bit faster than a laptop that gets louder, because it's the fans are kicking up higher, so you don't get the full performance 100% of the time. But when we ran it through our benchmarks, it was still scoring near the top, especially if it's a multi-threaded workload that can tap into all 4 cores. Let me run down the spec list of the configuration they sent us. It had the 8th gen Intel Core i7 8550U, which has a 1.8 gigahertz base clock, and it ramps all the way up to 4 gigahertz. 13.3-inch full HD IPS touchscreen panel. They also offer a 4K option if you need, you know, more pixels on your screen. 8 gigabytes of 16 megahertz RAM. You can double that to 16 gigabytes for $35, and given how much RAM costs, I think, to me, that's a no-brainer to go ahead and spend the money up front, since you can't take it apart and add more RAM later. So go ahead and, if I was looking at this machine, I'd really recommend bumping up to 16 gigabyte. You have a 256 gigabyte NVMe solid state drive, which pushes data through the PCIe bus for faster performance. And then the rest is pretty standard fare. You have built-in Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, all that good stuff. There is one full-size USB 3.1 Type A port, which is the standard connector that, you know, everybody has. And then there's also 2 Thunderbolt 3, which is USB-C on there. So you have some feature connectivity there as well. They also, HP, when they sent this out, they sent a few adapters with it as well that, to my knowledge, does not come with the system, but they do offer adapters to take advantage of those USB-C ports. Like if you want to have a wired internet connection, there's no Ethernet port on there, but there is an Ethernet adapter, and there's a few others as well. Overall, like I said, it's a fast laptop. It's not always going to be leading class because of throttles, but it's fast, it's quiet, it's light, it looks good, and it's a premium laptop. So if you're in the market for a 2-in-1, this one is fairly easy to recommend, I think.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, at under 3 pounds, now we're getting quad-core Kaby Lake processors, Intel Kaby Lake processors, Kaby Lake R, that boost up to 4 gigahertz. How did it sound, and how did it feel thermally with all that horsepower? You've got a quad core now on board, and that thing's got, in some cases 2x the horsepower.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. So I forgot to mention, a lot of laptops, it's kind of a misnomer. You put it on your lap, it gets hot real fast, so they're not true laptops. You're going to want to put it on a desk. This one, that wasn't the case. I mean, it warms up towards the back, but as far as the base of the laptop, it stayed fairly comfortable if you want to use it on your lap. So that was a high point to me. And like I said, as far as noise, they did do a good job in keeping this one quiet, so it doesn't have that high whir that some laptops have. And because I played with some of those, and that gets a little obnoxious. This one doesn't have that. You pay a performance penalty when it throttles, but I think with the access to the quad core chip, I think that's an acceptable trade-off.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm looking at the battery life numbers. I think maybe we have a small little typo in the chart, but I think what you recorded there was 503 minutes, which is near the top quadrant of anything we've ever tested with a 1080p display, right?
Yes, battery life was very good there. I think the only thing that's done better is the Dell XPS 13 that we recently reviewed as well. That thing was just off the charts there at 623 minutes. Lenovo's ThinkPad X1 Carbon was right up there as well. I think, was it say 534? So it's about on par with that. Right. These are some of the best battery life figures we've seen to date since we've been been running our homebrewed test.
Right. Yeah. And just to give folks some background, we run a video loop test that loops 1080p HD video over and over, gives a minute rest every so often, records time down to the second. And we run it through VLC, which has hardware optimization, for integrated graphics to offload the decode of the video. So it's a pretty good test. I would say it's probably a little bit more strenuous. A video test.
We also we calibrate our displays on each laptop as well, so that the brightness is, we're not just going in there and setting the brightness at 50%. We're making sure the brightness level is the same across all the laptops, which give us, a level playing field as far as comparing battery life.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting. All displays are not created equal, as we will discuss when we get to the Ryzen Mobile discussion with the HP laptop we tested there. But yeah, good looking machine, Paul. And I got to tell you, when you're looking at the numbers, what Intel did, and we're going to talk a little bit about 8th gen, what Intel did there is impressive to enable that much more performance and preserve battery life at the same time. Good stuff. Good stuff from HP. They will be live and in charge, I'm sure, at CES. So look out for continued coverage on that. And but let's move on. I just got back from a ridiculously beautiful place. We'll stay in the frame of notebooks and go even a little lighter and even a little bit longer battery life. I just got back from Maui, Hawaii. And the lovely island of Maui. The folks at Qualcomm had me out there, and yes, I do have a little swag bottle which I'll bring on board. Qualcomm Snapdragon Coolie bottle, which is keeping me hydrated here. But this is not a paid promotion, but that's a nice swag. I like that. Anyways, so Qualcomm Snapdragon in laptops, and as you may have heard, and as we've covered at HotHardware over the past few weeks and months, Microsoft and Qualcomm have teamed up to enable full Windows 10 functionality on Snapdragon. Specifically, Snapdragon 835 is the processor that Qualcomm is working with these days in these machines. They also announced the Snapdragon 845 follow-on generation chip as well while we were out there at the summit. But Snapdragon 835 powered laptops running full Windows 10. The machines that I actually got hands-on time with, John, if you can put that back on the display there, is the actually another HP. It is the HP Envy X2. And I got some hands-on time with that. That's the Asus one. If you scroll down a little bit, John, I think, no, up on that page. There you go. There's the baby. So that's the HP Envy X2. It is powered by a Qualcomm Snapdragon 835. This one is running Windows 10 S. And I think that's just the way Microsoft kind of like to set it up for these events. Just to have Windows 10 S out there, they're kind of pushing that walled garden, keep everything safe and virus free and locked down with Windows platform apps only. At any rate, you can upgrade to standard Windows at any time with the machine, and the machines do they're fully capable of running full Windows 10, not just Windows 10 S, as well as full Win32 compatibility for backwards compatibility for apps. So really impressive stuff. I looked at the machine. I got some hands-on time. I did a little bit of work with it. I can tell you that performance felt snappy. There were maybe a couple of little hiccups here and there, but it was hard to tell because there were a lot of people with hands on the machine, lots of apps fired up simultaneously. I saw things like, multiple web browsers fired up, apps running in the background, augmented reality apps running, all powered by the Snapdragon 835 on Windows, no problem. The hook here with these machines, and then I'll kick it over to you guys for some opinion. The hook here is that these will offer crazy battery life to the extent that we're going to see 20 to 25 or so 20 plus hours of battery life, up to 25 on a single charge. So basically what you're talking about is obviously what is essentially what we've known historically as a cell phone processor, but with a notebook or laptop size battery. In this case, the NVX2 is a 12.5-inch machine. So pretty impressive stuff. You've got a big battery backing up that processor that is fully capable of running Windows 10. 4 gig of RAM in this machine, but configurable up to 8 gigs of RAM. I think I saw in a couple of different configurations, including HP's. What do you guys think? There's an interesting value proposition. Pricing starts at $599, so I'll just put that out there, and goes up to about $799 on the high end. What are your thoughts?
So, this platform is really interesting to me. On one hand, I'm sure people are going to draw comparisons to Windows RT and the original Surface, not Surface Pro, the original Surface. Microsoft launched Windows RT, basically Windows on ARM. It confused the hell out of people. They were wondering why their apps didn't work, and it was killed off. And now the lower end Surface have Intel processors running full Windows 10. This is a different animal. So yes, it's Windows on ARM, but Microsoft has developed that Win32 emulation layer to run current desktop applications. So you basically end up with, and we should reiterate that Windows 10 and the native Windows apps and universal apps are native to ARM. Those aren't running on emulation. So this is a version of Windows 10 that's native to that processor platform. It's only the Windows 32 apps running in that emulation layer. So you have what's essentially a really low power. We haven't run benchmarks, but Dave has had hands-on time. Good performing platform. Not, it's not a Core i7. It's a good performing platform, but with exceptional battery life. And with the platforms, with the actual form factors of the machines that we were shown, in my opinion, it looks like Qualcomm and Microsoft's play is to use premium platforms, and they're betting on consumers paying a premium for battery life. Because in my initial reaction was pricing's a little too high for what the machines offer. I know people will pay a premium for a super fast SSD or a fast processor or a gorgeous screen. How much are people willing to pay for exceptional battery life? And we're talking exceptional to true, always on, always connected LTE connectivity, 20 plus hours. So multiple days. If a typical use day where you're opening and closing the lid, we have reports of people using these things for almost a week without having to charge them. So are people willing to pay for that? Probably some. I don't know. Yeah. We're going to find out.
You made two excellent distinctions there. Thank you. In my rambling, I left out a couple of key points. One, yes, that emulation layer only exists for backwards compatibility on Win32 apps. Yes, native Windows 10 apps run native, and then yes, the connectivity is big. Obviously, Qualcomm big in the mobile space in handsets. They've got that whole radio section locked up with their IP, and they bundle that in. It's better integrated, I would say, in the package. It's not like it's new. I mean, we've seen cellular connectivity in notebooks before. But this is, comes standard for the price, and there was some interesting discussion about that actually at the event on how OEMs and carriers will roll these out to the market. You might see, $599, $799 laptops with cellular connectivity being subsidized by a carrier on a plan, just like you do in a phone. You might see them sold. You'll probably see them sold multiple ways, unlocked, just like phones as well. And then, of course, at retail, in places like Best Buy and all that. So it's going to be interesting to see how the channel brings these out and perhaps makes them more affordable as a result of some of the tricks they can play in the channel for financing there, for some folks that care about having that always connected cellular connectivity. And that can be huge. I mean, sometimes finding a Wi-Fi signal sucks. Let's just face it. So, that could be a good strength as well.
Yeah, and I'm wondering did they give you any clarity? Is that battery life realistic to be? Can you expect that kind of battery life running desktop applications, or is it, strictly native apps with the cellular connectivity? Like if you can get 20 plus hours with decent performance running native apps, that's pretty cool. I don't know. I need to play with one.
Yeah, no, I think we're going to need to prove it out. Those were the claims, absolutely, 20 plus hours of battery life. And they underscored that, beat the drum on that, high and low. The other thing that's interesting that we should probably just touch on real quick with respect to this platform, and then Paul, I want to get your thoughts on this guy too. I know this isn't your kind of beast of a machine. You're like a little bit more equipped machine, but
Paul likes them big.
Paul likes them big and powerful. big and nasty. Anyways,
that's for a
God.
different show.
I was teeing that up for you, Marco. I was teeing that up for you, and you took
Thank you.
it.
If you set it up, I'm going to knock it down every time. Thank you.
So yeah, so what's interesting, what's going to be very interesting with this as well is you have to remember it's not just laptops. Now we have, you know, Windows on Qualcomm ARM in places like embedded. I mean, you can think of a number of different you know, industrial, commercial applications, infotainment in cars. I mean, you can just go on and on and on. That low power, always connected platform that has great battery life and good connectivity. Again, you're talking about, you know, the future of Snapdragon being gigabit LTE compatible and all that good stuff. Pretty powerful in the embedded space as well. So it'll be interesting to see Qualcomm's get some guns lined up.
Paul, can I make 2 more points before you jump in? Because I'll forget them if I don't say them now. So there's 2 other really interesting things to me in this whole play. We saw this new Windows on ARM running almost a year ago. So Qualcomm has had a heck of a time and Microsoft, a lot of time to tweak and tune this. And they showed it to everybody at their event on the 835. But you can bet the upcoming Snapdragon 845 is way more tuned for these kinds of workloads. So I would not be surprised if a few months in, if there was an exponential jump in performance, even though in terms of the total mobile platform, 845 might not be monstrously more powerful than an 835, but with some workloads, I think you're going to see a big jump specifically tuned for this. And I also made a prediction a while back about Microsoft and the Surface phone that was rumored forever. You guys know I was one of the last holdouts on Windows Phone. I have since ditched it for Android.
Poor bastard.
Microsoft's CEO has said that at some point they'll probably make another phone. I don't think they're going to call it Windows Phone. I personally think it'll be some sort of this isn't Windows Phone. It's full Windows in your pocket. And this is a glimpse of what that platform could be. You basically have full cell phone, smartphone functionality, but also full Windows. So I think that's the next play by Microsoft with a pocketable Windows product. I'm just predicting, guessing, but that's my guess.
Yeah, no, it makes sense to me. John, just real quick, flip back to the page. And we'll close this up. So another thing to note on this platform, and Paul, I want to get your opinion as well, but another thing to note on this platform is that what we're seeing in the initial rollout are 2-in-1 detachable devices or convertibles. In the case of the HP, you can see it's very much like a Microsoft Surface Pro, detachable, 2-in-1 detachable with that keyboard, and you know, converts to a tablet. And then the Asus machine was actually a 360 hinge clamshell setup. So the obvious initial pitch here is thin and light convertibles, and we may see them expanded to something perhaps a bit beefier when you know, when the 845 comes out. But who's to say? That's all speculation. Paul, last thoughts on Qualcomm's Snapdragon Windows powered devices?
I think what Marco said was the most interesting thing about it is that it could be a glimpse of Microsoft's next phone if and when they do something like that. As far as in the laptop or the 2-in-1 form factor, it's really hard to have an opinion just yet before actually playing with one and seeing how it performs. Not just battery life, but I mean as far as running different apps and programs. So we'll wait and see, I guess.
From what I can see, and from the apps they had installed on the machines, when you talk about things like basic productivity, web browsing, that all functions pretty seamlessly. It's pretty smooth. I also saw again an augmented reality demo where they were mapping a 3D rendered character on the rear image that was being captured by the rear camera, and that functioned seamlessly and fluidly as well. It was very smooth, and that's not so surprising because we've seen Google Tango, and that's all been powered by Snapdragon historically as well on handsets. But what's going to be interesting is when you fire up things like Photoshop, or maybe you do try a little video production on one of these things and see if it hangs. I don't know. It might be a chug fest, but we'll have to see. Have to test them.
Yeah, I think it's going to be. I do not want to draw parallels to the netbooks, but for people that use a PC for basic daily productivity, email, web browsing, office apps, probably going to love it. Probably going to love the battery life. If you're a heavy user thinking, oh, I'll switch to this and get this crazy battery life, I don't know. We're gonna have to see how it performs.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to something a little bit more beefy, the way Paul likes it. The Ryzen Mobile powered HP NVX360, and we took a look at a machine that actually, because they just showed up in the channel quicker than the press seeding round that we normally are on, we took a look at a machine that we got at Best Buy. So this is a right off the shelf config, not dialed in by the marketing team for our testing. And the HP NVX360, I don't know if you can cut to that, John, but this is a 15-inch machine with a 15-inch IPS display and Ryzen Mobile on board. So now you've got an 8-core Ryzen CPU and an integrated 8-core Radeon Vega GPU on board. You scroll down a little bit, we did do the teardown on it to upgrade it to an SSD. The config that we got at retail was a hard drive setup machine, and that obviously slows things down. But as you can see, it's an interesting machine because it's got some neat features that some folks, more enthusiasts or folks that care about the long-term value of the machine, are looking for. So it's got options for upgrading the hard drive to an NVMe SSD. You've also got full-size SODIMM slots for upgrading the RAM. It's not soldered to the motherboard. So some nice features there, as well as that hard drive for bulk storage if you choose to go that way. So there's some nice features there. Performance-wise, it was very interesting. You're talking about a CPU, and I'll kick it around to you guys. You're talking about a CPU that competes with Intel 8th gen Kaby Lake R, which we'll talk about next before we close up. And actually, we're gonna address the audience and chat some net neutrality real quickly as well. But this machine competes with Kaby Lake R, and so quad core performance. This is a quad core Ryzen chip, not 8-core. I think I said 8-core earlier, with 8-core Vega graphics. So competes on the CPU standpoint with Kaby Lake R, and actually almost doubles the performance of integrated graphics on the Intel side with its Radeon Vega 8-core IGP that's on board the CPU. So double the performance from a gaming and graphics standpoint, roughly, maybe not quite, and comparable to Kaby Lake R in terms of the CPU. Thoughts, guys? We also have some other things to talk about relative to power and battery life. But
go ahead, Paul. This one's all you, baby.
Yeah. Well, this is kind of what people have been waiting for from AMD ever since they announced Zen and then Vega on the CPU and GPU sides, was, pairing them together in a laptop. So I think they have something good going with this. This is the first one we've looked at, though, right?
Right. Yeah, it's hard to draw definitive conclusions from this guy. Yeah.
But promising so far as what we've seen.
Right. Marco?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm excited for the platform. It's our results from what we saw on this particular machine kind of quelled the excitement a little bit, but again, we have to see some other machines. At the very high end of Intel's 8th gen lineup, they still have an advantage. They have quad core, higher clocks. In our initial tests with this particular machine, better battery life. But in the meat of the CPU lineup, Ryzen Mobile CPU performance is competitive and really strong on multi-threaded workloads. But then you get that really much stronger integrated GPU. Now, it's not as fast as some of the entry discrete GPUs, but still, if you're looking for the thinnest, lightest possible platform and you're going to be sticking with on-processor graphics, the Vega core on Ryzen Mobile just smokes Intel's graphics engine. So you end up with a competitive CPU, much better GPU, but in the platform Dave tested, battery life just wasn't there. Now we can't really say whether it's strictly Vega, because these particular HP machines. Other people are reporting that even the Intel platform doesn't have great battery life. So maybe there's a microcontroller in there that's not tuned properly, and power is getting used where it's not supposed to. Who knows? We need to test more machines, but I'm cautiously optimistic that Ryzen Mobile is going to be a winner for AMD.
Yeah, I think that describes it for me as well. Cautiously optimistic. I think you look at this machine, it's a sub 5-pound machine with a 55 watt-hour battery. You've got a 4-core, 8-thread CPU with Radeon Vega graphics on board. Fair amount of horsepower, 8 gig of RAM is what we tested, and that 15-inch display. I'm suspect in my testing. I had to push the display hard to get reasonable brightness out of it to match our test group that we typically test at, the brightness level, which is kind of nominal. It's really not much to ask in terms of brightness. It's like, okay, visible, but not crazy bright. It seems like a nice happy medium, somewhere around 40 to 60%, depending in a Windows setting, depending on what laptop you're testing. But I had to push this one harder to get the brightness. So I'm suspect of the panel. I think the next, machine we test with Ryzen Mobile, if it has a more efficient panel, could do a lot better. But we don't know yet. We've only tested one machine. The performance looks great. Battery life, not so much, but can't really call it, the way we see it right now. I don't think that would be fair. I think it'd be premature, right? Yep. So, but yeah, interesting to see. It's great to have AMD back in the mix. They're certainly back in the mix on desktops and relative to even with server and high-end workstation with Threadripper. Nice to see them in notebooks as well. Competition helps us all. Let's move on to the competition and talk about Kaby Lake R real quick. We've been taking a look at a lot of Kaby Lake R notebooks. Paul, you took a look at the XPS 13 with Kaby Lake R quad core. You took a look at that HP Envy X360. Marco, you've seen the numbers. Impressive what Intel was able to do. Do you think it was a reaction to AMD Ryzen Mobile on the horizon? Like if they didn't get that quad core out, they knew they'd have an issue, because now you've got quad core Ryzen Mobile offering up the kind of performance that Kaby Lake R offers. What do you think?
Well, Intel's. I think the way the lineup was arranged was probably tweaked because of Ryzen Mobile, but the quad cores have been there. Intel has had the high-end quad core mobile parts, even with previous generations. It just wasn't as pervasive. So what happened with Kaby Lake R, this could be confusing if you hear 8th gen. So 8th gen on the desktop is the Coffee Lake architecture.
Right.
8th gen mobile is Kaby Lake refresh.
Yeah.
To put it simply, what Intel did with Kaby Lake R is they took the existing Kaby Lake architecture. They made quad cores from Core i5s all the way up through Core i7 now. So Core i5 up are all true quad cores with hyperthreading. So quad cores, 8 threads. It's a tweaked manufacturing process. The power profiles have been tweaked. So you basically end up with quad core 8-thread parts within the same 15-watt power envelope as the original Kaby Lake. And because it is such a huge leap in performance, especially in multi-threaded workloads, Intel said, you know what, this is worthy of an 8th gen moniker. It's not really a 7th gen refresh. So we have a really cool article up. Our guy Chris did a really interesting article that you don't get to see very often. He got his hands on 3 almost identical Acer Swift machines. One is 7th gen, one is 8th gen Kaby Lake R, and one is 8th gen Kaby Lake R with discrete NVIDIA graphics. So we got to do as close to apples notebook comparisons, which is usually hard to do because the platforms change so much. And what you see is some really, really cool data. You see, now I have to just back up one second. One thing Intel had to do to get that 15-watt power envelope is drop the base clocks on these chips quite a bit. So, for example, a Core i7 7600U, one of the higher-end 7th gen mobile parts, had a base clock of 2.8 gigahertz with a boost clock of 3.9. Now, the Core i7 8650U has a base clock of only 1.9 but it turbos to 4.2. So you have a lower base, but a higher boost, because those tend to be kind of bursty. Unless you're running a benchmark that's going to whack the CPU, it's not going to stay at that boost clock for a long time. So what you see in the benchmarks are competitive or better single core performance, way better multi-threaded performance with similar battery life. So efficiency has gone up, performance in multi-threaded has gone up. Really a lot to like about the platform as a whole.
Yeah. That's what's impressive to me. They got that performance up, maintained a 15-watt TDP. Okay, it's all configurable, so they're able to sure they dial down the base clock when you don't need it, and still give you that nice top end boost, and get into that 15-watt TDP with 4 cores. And so, essentially the same thin and light, sometimes sub 3-pound machine. HP NVX360, was it the Spectre or the NVX360? I'm trying to remember now. That you had, Paul. Spectre. Thank you. Yeah. So you're talking sub 3-pound machine with a quad core. Why are you laughing, Marco?
Because of my crazy head. You said Spectre and I heard Spanker.
Wow, I don't even want to try and analyze what that means. Dude.
Yeah, it's my crazy.
It's a good thing we can't see his other browser tabs right now.
Right, yeah.
Or where my hands are.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Oh no. HR is like calling right now. My ears are burning. No.
I am HR.
Unbelievable. Yeah, no, but that's what's impressive. I don't know. How do I segue out of that? Jesus.
Good luck.
That's what's impressive is the quad core 15-watt thing and getting that much more horsepower for the same battery life and in the same type of machine. You don't have to go to a big bulky machine.
Yeah.
You mentioned there have been quad cores in notebooks, and of course they have, but they've always been in fuller figured machines, 15-inch and up, and something with a lot more weight to it. So yeah, sub 3 pounds. Good stuff.
And other minor tweaks. It's the same processor cores. It's the same GPU core, even though it has a different name. But the clocks have been slightly tweaked, and Kaby Lake R also supports faster default memory speeds. So, you end up with somewhat faster GPU performance, much faster CPU performance. And then to get specific about battery life, just to give everybody watching an idea, a Core i5 7200U based Acer machine with a 48.3 watt hour battery did 298 minutes in our custom video loop test. The Core i5 8250U based Acer machine with a slightly bigger battery, 50.7 watt hours, did 281 minutes. So it's a little bit lower, but it's in that ballpark. So you get basically double the multi-threaded performance plus the faster GPU. For just a few minutes less battery life. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. I think it depends on the machine too. Like I think the Acer machines were a little bit more they sipped a little bit more power with Kaby Lake R. I think the XPS 13, Paul, if I recall, did just as well, right?
I think that's the best example we've seen of these new processors so far is Dell's implementation in that XPS 13. In our battery test, that's top the charts, and it's not even close right now. It was 623 minutes for the one with the 1080p screen, and the one that was 3200 by 1800 was still 428 minutes. It stayed up, so it's an impressive machine.
They have a pretty stout 60 watt hour battery in that machine, but I'm wondering if the Infinity Edge display, some sort of technology they use for that panel to build it the way they do, is also just happens to be power efficient as well. Because it does. Those machines generally do pretty well in our battery tests. So very cool. Well, let's move on to before we close to a couple of quick things, housekeeping, I guess, but important stuff that we were reminded of in the live chat to talk about. This is for Blackhawk. Your request is, and maybe Chris too. We're going to honor that request and talk about net neutrality and the FCC decision that is ruling that's coming down on December 14th, just a couple of days away. We posted an article recently talking about the internet protest that's going around right now called Break the Internet, where they're encouraging people to essentially rally on the social channels, whether it be Twitter, flooding Twitter with messaging to that effect, you know, like literally flooding it, trying to cause, dare I say, DDoS-like symptoms on the social channels with outrage over what is essentially the FCC ripping up net neutrality as we know it. They talk about you know, changing your status to defending net neutrality, or maybe on Facebook, married to the open internet, things like that, just to get the word across and get people talking about it and share your position on the matter. Gentlemen, I know my position on the matter. I don't like ISPs telling me, you know, your bandwidth is going to go into this bucket and that type of service is going to go into this other bucket that costs less or more. I'd rather have, in this case, which I am generally very opposed to, government regulation of anything. In this case, regulation of what is essentially a utility is good, I think. What do you guys think?
I think you need some government regulation on some stuff. Otherwise, some people go crazy. In this particular instance, don't fix what isn't broken, in my opinion. Now, the proponents of this vote that's coming up will say, well, it's not fair that every packet on the internet is treated the same. Somebody streaming Netflix, you know, a packet of somebody, let's say, downloading an illegal BitTorrent, that packet should not be as important as a data packet from somebody's security system because they fell down and they hit the panic button. And that, you know, that data from the security system should have priority on the internet. And, you know, that sort of might compel some people to say, oh, that makes sense. You guys, everybody watching, everybody that has a broadband internet connection, maybe 10 years ago this was an issue, but have you ever had a problem with your packet not getting where it needs to go because your neighbor was downloading something? I don't, those shared network bandwidth problems, I personally think are long gone, right? I haven't had an issue. I doubt you guys have had. Paul, have you had an issue with that?
No, and there's some critical services that are already exempt under the rules, like certain healthcare things where I don't know if it's specifically for like pacemakers that are internet connected, but things of that nature are already exempt. So that's kind of a distraction when they bring up that as a point of why we need to take down the rules, because it doesn't really apply.
Right. And then you have the ISP saying, we just need to change these rules, but we promise we're not going to change your broadband packages.
Right.
BS. That's exactly what they're going to do. So everybody watching, I mean, you literally only have 2 days till the vote. Come read that article on net neutrality, because Rod, who wrote it for us, did a really good job breaking it down for, you know, every man to sort of understand. And what could happen is that $40 a month you're paying now for broadband that basically lets you access anything on the web, maybe your base package goes down to $20, but then you got to pay another $10 to access your social media package, and another $10 to access your gaming sites, and another $10 to access news sites. And then you need, you know, the special $20 package that'll allow you to access torrents. And all of a sudden you're paying $100 a month, like these crappy cable TV packages we have, where you're spending $300 a month because you want Disney, when you don't watch 200 of the other channels. That's what's going to happen to your broadband. So yell at everybody. Do not ruin net neutrality.
Yeah, John.
And the latest development today too was the FCC partnered with the FTC to be a watchdog on this, which means that they're going to watch ISPs, and if they're not going to stop them from using the power, they're just going to make sure that they're honest about it, which I think is kind of funny. So as long as they disclose the bad behavior that they're doing, it's okay. It's kind of like walking into Best Buy and saying, "I'm going to steal this TV, but I'm telling you, so it's okay." Yeah.
John, I don't know if you can put up the URL I just put in the chat. We do have an article up. It's called "What is Net Neutrality and Why It Matters to You?" Thank you, John. There it is. Rod Share wrote that up for us, and that's a good sort of very baseline tutorial on all the ins and outs of net neutrality, why it's important, and why you should care. And there's our man, Ajit Pai, who is chairman of the FCC.
Pack for a grill, huh?
He does. I always think that too. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, no, he's not a very popular man with what he's proposing for a lot of folks that understand and make a living on the internet like we do. because this really turns things upside down. And I mean, hey, your cable bill is already ridiculous if you haven't cut the cord yet. And this is kind of where you're heading with it. You're allowing the ISPs to call the shots more so. And I understand the concept of, we're taking government regulation out and allowing free trade competition, a capitalist market, which is what America is built on. I get that concept. It doesn't work in this case. It just doesn't. We'll all get gouged. And anyways.
You bring up another thing I didn't mention. Imagine a $10 tech package so you can access sites like HotHardware. Like that's what's going to happen. Like it's just it's stupid in my opinion. So I don't know.
It might not get down to that kind of granularity, but you could definitely see things like, what's the most sought after app out there on the internet that's sucking bandwidth? Netflix. Let's go tax that. Let's go crank up the bandwidth on that, right?
Exactly.
They'll go right for the jugular. You know it. All right, we got to wrap it up.
Just one more last quick point. I'm sorry. Yeah. You have these giant companies that basically have access to the internet backbones directly, where they can. It's not that they could do whatever they want, but Google and Netflix and Facebook, they're not gonna suffer for bandwidth. They have the resources to do what they have to do, but smaller guys don't, and they're gonna get pinched. So make your voices heard.
Make your voices heard. Get out there, break the internet on the 14th. Get vocal in the channels. Read up on our article at HotHardware.com. What is net neutrality and why it matters to you? And if you stick around, we will be introducing in the next few days, hopefully, some very interesting giveaway items from a certain manufacturer, which we believe Lenovo is signing up for a holiday giveaway where we don't have prizes lined up just yet. We're still sort of hashing it out, but stick around. Marco, we'll have some good presents for girls and boys. Why don't you describe how we typically do things, maybe?
Yep, going to be super easy. If things pan out, we should have some mobile, some gaming stuff. We're not sure, but we should have. It will be multiple prizes, and we're going to keep it super easy. Come by the site, participate in the chat, make some friends with other like-minded, tech-loving individuals, and basically your interaction on the site is your entry. We might have you like a couple of Facebook pages. Keep it nice and easy. And as you interact on the site and contribute to the conversations, those are your entries, and we will randomly pick a winner.
Yeah, we generally do a holiday giveaway sponsored by a manufacturer this time of year. So we try and get 3 prizes, a first, second, and third place prize, usually something really cool and leading edge. We get the best stuff, the hottest hardware, dang it. So stick around. And I think that about wraps us up. You can find us all over the internet. So make sure you hit that subscribe button here on YouTube if you're streaming right now and catching us live. We appreciate it. Hit subscribe for more tech product reviews, event coverage, and of course, this always entertaining 2.5 Geeks webcast. YouTube.com/HotHardware vids, Twitter.com/HotHardware, Facebook.com/HotHardware, and Google plus HotHardware. Yeah, something like that. All over the place. Parting words, gentlemen, for the Yuletide season for these folks before we sign off.
Happy holidays. Thanks for sitting with us. Sorry it's been a while. We are going to get more regular at this. Hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, actually, good point. Wednesdays at 4 p.m. Eastern will be our normal slot. Paul, I'm sorry, dive right in.
I was just going to echo what Marco said. So, tune in.
Tune in. Cheers. Thanks for watching, and thanks for stopping by.